Welcome to the question of the day. Today's question is from Vince in Texas. And Vince asks, should you discount? And if so, how do you do it? Great question. I'm going to start off by giving a quick answer, but then I want to backfill and I want to talk about why I was blessed in my career, what I commonly see in the field, what discounting should look like, and then why it works if you do it that way. So, my quick answer is sometimes, but not from the salesperson. The salesperson should not be discounting. If I was king for a day, salespeople would not be allowed to discount. The manager should be in charge of the discounting. I want it to run through them every single time. And if I was a salesperson, honestly, I don't want the responsibility of it. I don't want it on my plate. If it's on my plate and I have the responsibility of it, the customer is going to look at you when you discount. Like, why didn't you just do that right away? Do I look stupid to you? Like, did you just try to take advantage of me? And they may even go forward with the sale, but now there's a judgment, an opinion of you and your company out there that you're shady, that you tried to maneuver a situation where you were going to charge them more when you really could have charged them less. I don't want to put myself in that position. I don't want to be able to discount. I don't want the customer to look at me that way. I want the manager to decide when we do it and how much we would discount for. I want them to make that decision because a manager's words carry more weight than my words. I'm going to talk more about that later, but a manager's words carry more weight than my words. I remember very early in my sales career, I would say something to my customers and my customers would be like, okay. And then my manager would come by and he'd say literally the exact same thing. They'd be like, oh, really? That's fantastic. Honey, did you hear that? Like his words carried more weight than my words simply because he was a manager. So I want to put him in a position to be doing that discounting. I don't want to be the one that's doing that. My job as a salesperson is to sell the value, to execute the process. That's my job. That's the only thing I want to be responsible for. So I said sometimes you discount. On an average day, no, I'm not going to discount. But there may be situations where I need to discount. So every company has a budget, right? Even if you're listening and you don't know you have a budget, you have a budget. Okay. So that budget, imagine that budget as like a straight line, right? Like you need to stay above the budget. Now, if you're selling jobs for full price, you are trending above that straight line. You're profitable. But when you miss a job, when you don't sell a job and your install team doesn't have anything to do, you still have to operate your business. You still have overhead that you have to cover. You still have to pay for that day. And so instead of trending above that budget line, now I start trending down below that budget line. Now I'm losing money because I still have to cover that. I have to eat that cost. It puts you in a hole. We could jump on a call together and we could figure this out for each individual business. But typically, if you miss just one job in a week, that wipes out all of your profits for the entire week. One job, just missing one, wipes out all of your profits for the entire week. And a few of them throughout the month would wipe out your entire month. And I don't know about you guys, but like I'm not doing this to break even. All right. Like I'm not just working to like see another day. I started working with a new company the other day and I asked them, it's the new year. And I said, well, how was your 2025? Were you guys profitable? And they said zero. That was their profit for zero. So think about that. Like they worked an entire year just to be in the exact same spot they were last year. They just survived. And sometimes like 2008, something like that. Like if you'd have survived, like that would have been a great year. But But that wasn't last year. All right. There should have been profit. So that's rough, man. That's not why I'm doing this. Wouldn't it make more sense to discount in those spots? So those spots where I'm about to not have a job, I'm going to have an opening and I'm going to be digging myself a hole. Wouldn't it make sense to discount in those spots, even to the point of just covering overhead, like breaking even on that job just to fill that spot? That way I can live and fight another day. I don't put myself in a hole. I don't keep growing, but I don't put myself in a hole that day. But I maintain so that the next day I come back and I can sell a job at full price and I can continue trending upward. Wouldn't that make more sense to discount in those scenarios? So those scenarios would be like, it gets to be like noon, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I got an opening at 8 a.m. the next morning. I don't have a lot of calls to run there to fill that 8 a.m. spot the next morning. It's about to go empty. So those afternoon calls I'm running, I'm going to be much more open to discount those jobs, but do it through my manager. If I'm doing follow-up calls that afternoon, I'm going to be following up and maybe discounting jobs to fill that spot so that we can fill that spot there. But I want it to run through the manager. I said earlier that I was very blessed. I was blessed when I started my career. And in looking back, I was super blessed because my first sales job, I was not allowed to discount. Couldn't do it. The price was the price and you just sold that price. When I did that, I remember thinking, this is tough because our competitors, all they would do was knock $500 off and try to beat us by $500. And that was tough, but it forced me to sell value. It forced me to focus on executing a process, building value, and I got really good at it. And it gave me an advantage over time because others got used to just discounting all the time, and I'm worth more than $500. So even the $500 discount just to get cheaper than me didn't cut it anymore because I was worth more than $500. Customers would rather spend $500 to work with me than work with the competitor. I rode along with a company in Michigan, and I saw this in real time. $7,000. That was the difference. There was a competitor charging $7,000 for an HVAC system. The company I was riding with was $14,000. But because the customers liked that customer that much more and wanted them to do the work, they were willing to pay double, $7,000 more. That's how much value that salesperson built on the call. It was amazing to watch. Amazing. So I got really good at it. And I even had this realization moment that price, honestly, the price doesn't matter. It's the value that you're building. So my first sales job, I sold cars. And with the cars, you would sell the service contracts as well. And a service contract at that time was like $2,000 to $3,000, something like that. A lot of money. And I sold this used Mercedes. Now on a Mercedes, the service contract was $7,000. And in my own head, I started doing that thing like $7,000. That's worth more than the car I drive. And nobody's going to buy that. But I maintained my composure. I sat down with the customers. And I was so nervous. I was so nervous. They weren't going to buy this. But this is all I said. All I said was, and here's that service contract. It costs $7,000. Now, you're buying a high-performing machine. So when it breaks, it needs high-performance repairs. That's it. That's all I said. That's all I could come up with. And the couple literally, they looked at each other. They looked back at me and they said, okay. And that was the moment it clicked for me. It clicked. Price doesn't matter. It's the value you build. And after that, I never worried about price again. So what do I see in the field? What do I see in the field? So I ride along with a lot of companies, a lot of sales teams. What do I see in the field? I see lots of discounting. Lots of discounting. Not all, but many. And usually it looks something like this. Usually we start with the price, but we very quickly slide into discounts right away. Like as soon as the customer says something, sometimes it's not even an objection. Sometimes they'll just go, whew, that's a lot of money. Like that wasn't even an objection. They were just making a comment. I say that when I go to Subway, like, whew, that's a lot of money. But then we're just like, well, let me discount. Da, 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 da. Like we slide right into these discounts. That's what I see often. And if I was a customer, I got to be thinking like, well, why did you even write that number down? Do I look dumb? Were you trying to take advantage of me? Occasionally, I even see salespeople just build the discount in right away. I rode along with this one salesperson and I watched him write out the quote and he wrote out the number, the price, and then right under that he wrote minus $2,000 and then whatever the new price was. Like he built the discounts in right away to present immediately to the customer. Like what's the point of that? I mean, if you were going to do that, I guess build 1,000 in to take it away right away. But that just seems like such a shell game. I don't know. That just seems stupid. But this causes us to race to the bottom. This causes us to not be profitable. It causes us to not sell value, to not execute our process. And that means we don't stand out from our competition. We look just like everyone else. I've seen many companies that go out of business that sell tons of revenue. When you ask them, hey, how much revenue did you do this year? Oh, I got tons of revenue. But then they're the ones going out of business because that revenue wasn't profit. That's a lot of work to not be profitable at the end. We just assume customers want to negotiate. That's what I see in the field a lot. In my experience, most people, they don't know anything about the trades. They're not in the trade. If they were in the trades, they would just do this themselves. But they don't know. They don't even know that you could negotiate. Did you know this? Do you know you can negotiate at Target? But nobody does. Nobody goes into Target and negotiates, but you could. I watched my wife do it one time. I love my wife. She's very special, but she is the one I try all my sales stuff on because if it works with her, if she thinks it's great, it's great. My wife is in Target and there was a mug and it had like a little scratch on the bottom, right? Just the bottom corner. It was nothing. I would have bought it. And she walked up to a manager and just said, "Hey, would you guys take whatever dollars for this mug because it's got a scratch down here?" And he said, "Yeah, sure." And he like put a sticker on it and walked her to the register and everything. Like you can negotiate at Target, like if you ask, right? Nobody does though. It's the same thing in our industry. Usually, what I see in the field is we're the ones bringing up negotiating. We're the ones bringing up discounts because we can't sell the value and we can't overcome objections. So, what should it look like? Well, first off, it should look like salesperson doesn't discount. Manager is in charge of the discounting. Salesperson is in charge of executing the process, delivering the value. If they get into a situation where they need a spot filled or price is an issue, their job is to know how to overcome that objection. And there's a number of ways that I go over how to overcome price in the objection bootcamp. There's a lot of tools you can use to overcome price without discounting. So their job is to execute that process, deliver the value, and know how to overcome that objection without even discounting. But if we're about to leave and lose the job, there is the high authority close. The high authority close is your Hail Mary at the end. That's the one where you're getting your manager involved and you are discounting to capture that job and fill that spot. And it's very specific. Often I say, I'm not a big fan of sales scripts, like say it exactly how I say it. I'm not a big fan of that. But in this situation, I am. You have to say it exactly how I say it. You have to execute it exactly how I execute it because the way that it's set up, one piece leads to another, leads to another, leads to another, and it leads to filling the spot. Okay, so it's very specific, and I go over it in the objection boot camp, and it works. It absolutely works. Last year, I had a company in North Carolina, captured 7 jobs the next week that they would have lost originally. These were jobs that they would have like walked away and left and not gotten. They captured 7 jobs in the home using the high authority close. It was a team of 3 salespeople. Company in Texas. I worked with this year, we worked on that high authority close. And he called me back a couple weeks later and he said, "This is awesome. My team," this was a team of plumbers, 80 to 100% closing, depending on the plumber. 80 to 100% closing because they were using that high authority close. It works. So here's the last piece. Why does it work? It works because it puts you in a position that you are on the customer side. You are working with them side by side to get them a better deal. You're calling the sales manager, the sales leader. And I said earlier, their words carry more weight. Here's why. Here's why their words carry more weight. If you've ever heard of the Milgram study, it's a famous study in authority figures. So the study came about after World War II. So after World War II, all these Nazi war criminals were on trial, and these atrocities were coming to light. People were seeing on television for the first time what these Nazi war criminals had done. And that didn't sit well with the public. How could anybody do that? And many of them had the same excuse. They said, "I was just following orders. I was just following orders. I was just following orders." And that didn't sit well with the public. How could you follow orders and do that to another human being? But they did. So Professor Milgram, they put a study together. And the study had two participants in it. So there was a test giver that sat in one room and a test taker that sat in the other room. And they couldn't see each other. Okay. The test giver giving the test had a little box. Okay. And it was connected through a cord in the wall to the test taker in the other room. And that box had voltages, increasing voltages. It was 10 buttons, increasing voltages. And the 10th button had like a skull and crossbones on it. Okay. And the point of the study was the test giver would ask a question. And if the test taker got it wrong or didn't answer, the test giver would then flip a button, electrocuting the test taker in the next room. And you can Google this. You can see video of it, right? Where the test giver asks a question, test taker gets it wrong or doesn't answer, flips a button, and you hear the guy in the other room going, "Rah! Stop, my heart, ah!" Sometimes they stop answering altogether. Now, there was a third person in this study, and that was the professor. Now, the professor was an actor, but the professor, he was supposed to be very stern. He was supposed to be that authority figure. He was dressed very professionally, like you think a professor would look. He never smiled. He had a stern look on his face. He was very direct in the way that he spoke. He was running the study. He was clearly the guy in charge. And when the test giver would try to stop, that's when the professor would step in and he would say, "No, you need to continue. I'm in charge here. They signed a waiver. You need to continue. Flip the button." 65% of the test givers flipped all 10 buttons, even through the skull and crossbones. Even when the guy in the next room stopped responding, they would flip the button. 65%, because they were listening to the authority figure. People listen to authority figures. Now, the study, the test taker in the other room was also an actor. The cord was hooked up to a red light bulb. When the red light bulb would go off, the actor in the other room would pretend to get electrocuted. Whew, that's pretty heavy, right? So, but it illustrates we listen to authority figures. And so what I want to do as a salesperson, I want to harness that. I want to use that. I want to use my manager to put them in that authority figure so that if I have to discount in those scenarios, that's how I'm doing it. I have much better odds of moving this forward if I use that high authority close with my high authority figure. So I don't know about you, but I want to utilize my manager every time I'm discounting. So that's today's question of the day. If you're enjoying the question of the day, follow, share, give a rating. Question of the day is on major streaming platforms. If you have a question, reach out to me either on social media or email. Both are going to be listed below in the show description. Let's get your questions answered. Or if you are a Nexstar member, schedule a call with me and we can address this one-on-one and get very specific to your situation. I'm Coach Chris. We'll see you tomorrow.